This is We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling, where I give you the tools and skills you need to love better so you can live better. A few weeks ago, I interviewed New York Times bestselling author Roden Winter. Her book, More, documents her journey as a Brooklyn mom who ventures into the world of polyamory as she opens up her marriage. My interview with her was so fascinating, and if you haven't listened to it, I will link to it in the show notes below. I just reread her book while I was on a solo vacation, and I have to tell you, about every 50 pages or so, I found myself literally taken aback by how well her husband, Stewart, navigated situations that would have puzzled, I don't know, me, a relationship therapist. This guy struck me as so emotionally intelligent, so evolved. Throughout Molly's book, again and again, there were so many wrong responses he could have had to things. And this guy, in my opinion, he just consistently lands on the right one, which is why I had to have him on the show. I wanted to drill down on his thinking and his understanding of how he came to the conclusions that he landed on, and probably still does. Like, was he just lucky? Or has he actually been taught relationship skills? Here's a little bit about the man behind Molly. He has a number of professions. He is a stand-up comedian, which I am very much looking forward to, an ad copywriter, a writer and producer for ABC News, a sound designer for Sesame Street, and the founder of a company called Video Helper that writes music for television shows and movie trailers, which is celebrating its 30th birthday. But mostly, he wants me and us to know that 28 years ago, he was lucky enough to meet his wife, Molly Roden, whom he promptly married and is happily celebrating his 25th anniversary with this August. He is also the father of 2 sons. So let's meet him. Stewart Roden, thank you for joining me. Who is this guy and how did he get to be this way? I'm like assessing this through a therapist lens, and there were just so many opportunities for you to step in landmines again and again, and you navigated it with a level of finesse that confused and impressed me. And that is why I wanted you here today.
Oh. To be honest, most of it was dumb luck. We had the benefit of doing the open marriage late in our relationship and late in our lives, and I think we had passed all the bullshit of like the basic insecurities. You know, we moved directly onto like insecurity 301. So it was kind of cool that I think we had an opportunity to kind of go through our marriage and have 12 years together before we started the open marriage. But I don't know how some of the decisions were made, except just common sense. Both Molly and I made wrong decisions, but thank God never, such a bad one where it affected, the marriage itself.
None that were terminal. And I will say that I find common sense to be quite uncommon. What seems to emotionally intelligent people to be common sense, it's not universal. I've built a whole career on teaching what some people would call common sense, but they're relationship skills. And by the end of this conversation, I really hope to have some understanding of, because I don't buy the dumb luck stuff. I buy some of that, but some of that has to have been informed by your history. And I agree with you. 12 years in, for sure, you've navigated a lot of the relationship ruptures that would generally cause people to separate and live different lives if that's what they were going to do. But isn't it interesting how having an open relationship unearths things that you thought were sorted out, and suddenly you realize, oh, that still has a pulse, man. That is still alive and throbbing.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny. This is the most inappropriate comment to say, but it's kind of like herpes, that it might disappear, but it's still going to be there. And boy, please don't make that my quote. But it is, you never get rid of, like, it's just like, fat cells. Okay, that's a better, like, when somebody loses weight, the fat cells still stay in the body, but they just get smaller. And it's the same thing that I think any hurts you've got, oh, you're a therapist. My God, you know this, that, we're still dealing with stuff that we were dealing with before. And it comes out worse in a relationship. And even if something happens in a relationship and as you said, they think it's fixed, it comes back to haunt you in the weirdest ways. But you know it's coming. That's the best part of it. And you have a chance with an open marriage to also experience it with other people. And sometimes with other people, it's far worse that they don't have the self-awareness that, your partner has. And you're able to like, all right, I've dealt with a nuclear option. I can so fucking deal with the Bay of Pigs. Well,
That's
actually, that was also a
interesting.
nuclear option. That's a horrible.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. What I heard you say
Mhm.
is that some of the issues that you thought you had, oh, I know how to handle this because I've done this with Molly. And then you would have the same issue present itself with a new partner. And you were like, oh my gosh, because there's a new variable. This new person doesn't have Molly's history or way of coping with this issue. It winds up being a bigger fire than it was with Molly. So I'm curious
Right.
if you have an example of that.
Some people can't take a lot of truth. Some people, when they ask, so who else are you dating? And you might give them too much information, or something that hadn't bothered them before suddenly is bothering them a tremendous amount out of nowhere. And that was always a surprise to me. Like, where did this come from? And the thing is, like, everyone you date is just the same as yourself, that they could have had a bad day or they've had whatever. So I have learned to kind of tell people about what they need to know. And I mean, I'm honest with them. If they ask, I have to warn them. I always say, like, you want to know. If you want to know, I'll tell you. But I don't think you want to know. And I think that's how it worked with every relationship you've ever had, with your parents, with your kids, with everyone in your life, with your boss. Yeah, don't worry, don't mind the smell of smoke. There's no more fire. I mean, there never was a fire. Yeah, that kind of thing.
You are 5 years older than Molly, right?
Yes.
And I read in her book that because you were more sexually experienced than she was before you guys got married, you had told her there's going to come a point in our relationship or in your life where you're going to be attracted to someone else, you're going to want to sleep with someone else. When that day comes, that's fine with me. You just have to tell me. Do I have
Right.
that part right?
You do.
How did your expectations of open marriage compare to what you actually experienced, especially early on in the open marriage?
It's funny. I didn't know what to expect because I think when Molly and I opened the marriage, and again, I just opened it up for her, I just thought it would be able for her to excise any kind of, or exercise, should I say, any kind of, uh, all right, I guess the best way of putting this is grass is always greener, right? That in marriages, and especially with my friends' marriages, even before my own open marriage, all my friends would complain, like, I really wish I could have sex with this person, or I wonder what else I'm missing. Like, did I get married too young? Kind of the fear of missing out, the FOMO thing. It's huge in a marriage, that is the most destructive thing. I noticed that I started watching these videos of like people who have these like $30 million apartments. And I'll sit there going, God damn, I wish I lived there. No, I don't.
Right.
Why? Like, once you have a view, you see it maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And then the rest of the time, you've got other stuff to deal with. And that's the beauty of an open marriage, is that you can experience what you thought was different. And sometimes it's great and it is different, but you get to see what you have and you get to really appreciate it. And not referring to Molly as an it, but the relationship.
So did opening your marriage help you to appreciate Molly more?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, when I met Molly, I walked into a party and I saw her, and not to get all woo-woo, but I immediately thought that that's the woman I'm going to marry. I just knew it. I hadn't even heard her speak. She looked familiar. She just seemed familiar. And I just had this attraction to her. I just knew I was going to be with her. I have always had this level of comfort with her. I've always had this kind of, like, I always knew that she was someone special to me. And we got along on a level, even from the beginning, that I hadn't had previously. I didn't think it was possible. I just thought, I'm going to settle for someone who, I'm attracted to, and then we'll just work out the kinks. But she and I have grown together. And I have never been a granola or, person like, nurturing the soul kind of thing, but we really have helped each other learn a lot.
How did her experience of opening the marriage, did it have any positive impact on her relationship with you and the extent to which maybe it diminished any FOMO that she might have had?
I definitely think so. I mean, that was my concern that she would have FOMO and that I wouldn't know if she was going to be with me or she'd be thinking of someone else. So to remove that, and maybe it's my own insecurities too, but not only did I want to provide her with the opportunities I had before we got married, because she'd only slept with 5 people or 3 people, but I wanted her to kind of basically be at the same playing level I was, where I felt that I had kind of figured out what I wanted, both emotionally and sexually. And I kind of wanted her to catch up because I think we were happy, but I didn't want to wake up in 20 years and have her go like, I should have married Larry. And I wanted her to be able to see like what I had experienced, that when you find the right person, you can go off on dalliances, you can go off to side roads, but you always come back to, this is the person I really want to be with.
In hindsight, do you feel like you prepared enough before opening your marriage?
Fuck no. No, definitely not. Because you're never prepared. You really are never, you don't see some things coming. And I mean, they're not awful, world-ending asteroids kind of thing. But there are things like, I didn't realize I was petty like that. I didn't realize that I would have an inability to talk about something that bothered. I've always been pretty open, but some things are really hard to talk about.
And
And
open by Molly's standards, and a different person would have different needs and would challenge you in different ways, I'm guessing.
exactly, everyone is different, but everyone is the same. The more, I mean, you're a therapist again, and when you hear people talk about their problems, everyone basically centers around the same points. It's just maybe how they approach them or how they communicate them or how it affects them. But for the most part, we're all going through the same thing. If you're in a monogamous relationship or if you're in a polyamorous one, the names have changed and some of the problems, but for the most part, it's the same emotions, just different packaging. You might not agree.
I do. I absolutely do. In fact, I say to clients all the time, I wish you could be a fly on my wall so you could hear how often people struggle with the very thing that you're struggling with. I'm not just bullshitting you. I'm not here to validate something that I think is invalid. The human emotions, the human experience is fairly universal. Our stories are different. It's shaded in differently depending on our history and where we are in the world and the date and time stamp of when we're contending with an issue. But the human experience is fairly complex and also universal. Um, so,
Yes.
and if I can help somebody to understand that the thing that they're struggling with, yes, you're not seeing it on Instagram, because what you're seeing on Instagram is a curated feed of bullshit. There's
Mhm.
snapshots of specific moments in our life. You're not seeing me on the floor of my kitchen with tears rolling down my face when I'm having a meltdown and I don't really know why. I'm not
Mhm.
posting that stuff on social media. You're going to have to listen to my podcast to hear those stories. Those aren't the things that I'm putting on my reels. But because we are all siloed and we're all like in our own little individual pods, we're not sharing with each other the wear and tear that life dishes us and that we have to fight through. We can feel very alone in our own experiences. So yeah, I'm with you. I think
Yeah.
that what I hear you saying is that, like, despite the fact that you may be labeling your relationship polyamorous because it's an open relationship, the same things you struggled with when it was monogamous are similar things that you're struggling with when you shift the model of the relationship.
Exactly. And the other great thing about, and about understanding that there's the model of the relationship that extends over a variety of situations is that when you're in an open marriage, you get to date other married people. And you get to then lay their marriage over yours and say, like, holy shit, they've got the same problems. or they've got, or like, oh, I remember that. Like they've only been married 10 years. Yeah, I know they're going to have a problem coming up. You get to see him. It's literally, if you were to take the transcription of an argument over anything, long story short is that that's the best part of it for me, is that I get to see that my marriage, when we have fights, is not so different than everyone else's. And
And you would
there's such
never
a
have
good
heard
feeling.
those stories if you
Hmm.
hadn't opened your marriage and been in an emotionally intimate relationship with another person. You
Yes.
would never hear those stories.
Yeah.
We have to find a way to share our struggles so that people who aren't in open relationships can also see, because that is an added benefit to the open relationship. You do get to see how similar the struggles that you're going through are to other people's.
Most
But we
definitely.
don't talk about that at cocktail parties. We don't talk about that at dinner parties.
Because there's a certain amount of secrecy in an open relationship because you have a lot of secrets floating around in your head that you're not allowed to talk about with other people. There are things that people I've dated have asked me not to tell my wife. And I'm like, I don't know then if you want to tell me, because my wife generally, I mean, I won't tell her everything, but if I avoid a subject, she'll just keep asking questions. But you find out things that are just the intensity of the emotional aspect, I think supersedes the sexual aspect sometimes.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. The emotional intimacy and the emotional intensity is like it's like a next level. It is like a next level. For people who haven't listened to my original conversation with your wife Molly, my last marriage, the last few years of it, my relationship was polyamorous, and it was so challenging, and it was also so revealing about myself. It showed me soft spots in me that I didn't really think still existed, similar to what you said at the top of this conversation. And it also helped me grow the capacity to hold space for and tolerate different emotional levels of intensity in other people than what I had to tolerate in my marriage.
So do you use your own experience in polyamory to counsel people who are new to it, or do you let them make their own mistakes?
Both. I believe that my job is to see around corners
Mhm.
in ways that my clients can't, and to tell them, I always remind them, I'm here to support you. I'm going to support whatever decision you make. Here's what I can imagine could be the multiple choice outcomes of this decision that you're thinking about doing. And I lay it out there, and then they make their own decisions. I don't always frame things as this is something I personally contended with. I reserve that for when I think my client is struggling with shame, or if I think that they like no amount of, I wish you could be a fly on my wall, soothes them and helps them feel like they're part of a collective instead of this uniquely broken individual. So when that's happening, I will throw myself in the middle of the fire and be like, I fucked up too. I did it too. I did it, and you still like me, so I can still like you.
Right.
Like your opinion of me isn't going to change. And so other people's opinion of you is not going to change because you're having this struggle. When I was preparing to open my marriage, I jokingly referenced that period of time as like getting a PhD both in women, because I had only been with men, and also getting a PhD to the extent or trying to learn as much as I could about what open relationships look like. So back then, it was when Amazon was just a bookstore. And I was so grateful that it was a bookstore because every book I needed came delivered and it was wrapped in covering, and not everybody understood what it was that was being delivered to me. And it gave me the ability to just, I tried to immerse myself in the material, but I'm with you. There was no amount of preparation that would have prepared me, but I can't imagine walking into something with less preparation than I gave myself. And I'm a therapist, and I was a therapist at the time. It's not for the faint-hearted, but nor are relationships.
No.
Relationships are not for the faint-hearted. They are work if you want them to
But
thrive.
It's funny that you approached it as you did your research because my wife did the same thing. She bought all the books. As soon as the word, like seeing other people, I'll be right back. It was like a cartoon. Roadrunner shot out, came back with like a pile of fucking books. And she's like, we should read these. And I'm like, oh no, like you can read them, but I don't learn very well from reading something. Like if I have to find out, don't test if the stove is hot with your face, I'm gonna have to, walk around with a burn on my face to really appreciate it. I really don't. You look concerned. I really don't
That's
test the stove that
unfortunate.
way. Yeah.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, there's a lot of makeup. But the problem that I have is that because I feel like I have to bump into walls to kind of learn something, I think it's really helped me though, that I think because Molly can say that she read about this, but when we started doing it, the books didn't prepare her for it. I felt gratified by that. But the other way, I also had no idea what was coming. So I think we were both even in our respective approaches.
What were your fears going into it?
Well, I mean, the obvious one, divorce. That what happens if we opened a box we couldn't close? What happens if she found someone that was much more everything than I, and I had confidence that I checked a few boxes, but nobody checks 100% of them. And if she found that person, I was kind of screwed. But I was also worrying if, like, how would this screw up our sex, like our sex life? But it's also the unknown because the biggest fear besides the divorce and the sex thing was that I had nothing to base this on. I knew I didn't have any friends. I had a
You
bunch of
didn't.
movies. No, I had no friends who were in open marriages. And I didn't know what to expect, except every Hallmark movie that basically intimates like, oh, there's an open marriage and oh, it collapsed. It's done. Not a lot of good stuff to go on.
When you imagined the possibility of divorce, how did you think that that would play out? Did you think she would just find somebody who checked more boxes than you? Or did you think it would erode the fabric of your relationship?
I think it would have done the latter. I think it would have eroded the fabric because Molly is not the kind to be that cruel or insensitive, but she's very compassionate. Like, I don't think she would change as a person, but I think it would create some dissonance where she would then have to weigh, I have this and I have this, and I really prefer this. And then she would politely, over the next 20 years, try to tell me. And, I mean, not 20 years, but I'm a slow learner. So maybe 20 years. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's a legitimate fear. That was the problem in the beginning. That insecurity that she said, oh, yeah, the date was okay. And then I'm saying to myself, is she saying it's okay because she doesn't want me to worry? Or was it actually bad or okay? Or was it good okay? That kind of game had to stop.
In every relationship, we have to make a decision for our own sanity, I think, to believe the words that our partners tell us. Because if you're constantly reading between the lines, that's crazy making kind of for both of you. So, mental telepathy is not something I'm a fan of, nor is it something I find that people are really good at. So, I always think
Yes.
that it's just a lot cleaner to teach for both partners to teach one another that I'm going to rely on your words. If you tell me stuff is okay, I'm going to take that to the bank. I'm going to rely on that.
Yeah.
And I'll wait to hear
Yeah.
otherwise.
And it's funny because you say telepathy, but that was a pretty frequent argument Molly and I used to have was that she would, and I think I'm not alone in saying this, one partner will always be angry at the other for being that not saying, you didn't say the right thing. I needed you to say this. And then you'll, what am I supposed to do? Read your mind? And I mean, I thought I said something that was similar, but apparently it didn't assuage your need for me to say it. And I've heard this from both women and men that they both say that their partner, like, why didn't you just say that? Because I don't know that word. That's not even in my vocabulary.
And the way to say that and to receive that can be like this. Next time, I would love it if you would say it and phrase it this way, because then you're not criticizing the person. You're really making a request for the future. And then the person doesn't have to go back in their time machine and correct something that's not correctable, because we all have our own, we come from different worlds. Even if we come, I mean, look at siblings with the same family, the same parents, the same family structure. They come out of that very different from each other. So
Yes.
when we're talking about romantic partners, we don't even have that level of commonalities. Everyone's got their own histories, everyone's got their own wounds, and we all have our own way of thinking our way through problems. We need to be told. We need to be told from each other what would have scratched the itch better.
But that is such a hard skill to learn.
Mhm.
Like, I think I've now been married 25 years, and I don't think I learned that till year 18, 17, maybe. And because it's hard. Nobody wants to look weak and be like, I need this. Because you don't want to be asking. I had a problem with it. I'll just speak for myself here. That I felt that if I had to ask her to do it, she would do it out of rote instead of understanding why she was doing it. And
It
to me, that
starts
was
it starts out of rote, and when the partner sees how that meets their partner's emotional needs or physical needs, something inside of you clicks, and it's gratifying. And the next time it's a little less artificial, it's a little less white knuckled. But that is a universal thing that people struggle with. It seems to take something out of the pleasure if we have to ask for it. And we have to get past that as human beings, because our
right.
partners are not mind readers.
And it's and I think, I mean, it's a good point that it still is organic if you ask for it, because, we can't intuit what we're supposed to say. But in this case, if they just start doing it, they start appreciating doing it for the right reason.
They do. They do. And it's always easier to hear as a request rather than what I needed was, I mean, and I'm guilty of it. Every relationship rule that you can break, I have broken 100 times over. I'm a very slow learner as well. And I'm married to a relationship expert who's also a therapist, works with couples. And so early on in our marriage, I would just be like, well, you know the tools also. Why aren't you using them? And then we get into a pissing match over that. Like,
Right.
I'm older than her. Why do I have to be the one modeling the good behavior?
Exactly. Yeah.
I really
Physician, heal
had to get
thyself.
past that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had to
I
get past
That's
that. And until I did, we were in a power struggle that lasted years. It was shitty. It was shitty and unnecessary. Someone needs to step in, lean in, and be willing to try something different if what you want is a different outcome.
and that's really hard because if you're in the midst of a fight, who wants to give up ground? Like, you're basically, I have worked so hard to feel this way, and if I have to step back and be the bigger person, fuck that. And I mean, I don't know, that has actually been a big thing in my marriage, is that we have both learned at different times to do that. Um, when Molly and I first got married, her boyfriend that she had previous to me was just very demanding and was controlling. And that translated into when Molly would apologize to me, she would say, I'm sorry you feel that way, which she didn't realize was the wrong way of saying I'm sorry. And
Right.
again, she legitimately felt I'm sorry, but it came out really bad. So I let it go and I let it go until eventually, like, you can't apologize like that.
So what
And
did you want her to say instead?
I just wanted her to say, I'm sorry.
Right.
That's it. Like, that's all. It's all really 99%. And you have to legitimately mean it. I think saying I'm sorry like you're a 7-year-old because you're just trying not to piss off your parents is one thing. But saying it and legitimately in a relationship and meaning it is important.
It
And
is.
it's also a good signal. If you're saying it too often, there's something wrong as well.
Agreed. Agreed. That is a relationship skill that she conflated. I mean, assuming that that's literally what happened. I don't want to speak for her, but if that's how it that's how it happened, that's literally because we've taught people to speak from feeling perspectives. I'm sorry you feel that way. But that winds up that's a conflation of two different relationship skills that when you put them together, it undermines the intention for the recipient. And it feels to the recipient the way it generally lands. Well, you tell me, how did that land on you?
I felt she was basically saying, tough shit. And that's how it translated in my head. Like, oh,
Like,
really? Poor
I'm
baby.
sorry that your feelings aren't aligned with reality. I'm
Exactly. I'm
sorry that
sorry you're not
you
an
have a
adult. Yeah. Yep.
right,
Yep. Yep.
right. In the book, Molly talks about the boundaries that she wanted in place, rules for how you guys would open your relationship. No falling in love, no sleepovers. What were your rules?
I think my rules didn't come out until later because in the beginning we had, again, all those rules, but
There were no
um
rules. There was no room for your rules.
kind of, yeah, there were a lot of rules.
I
You
know.
know,
I was tracking that all as I was reading the book. I was like, damn, there's not a whole lot of room here.
yeah, there's not. I mean, I could start, saying, you can't date anyone whose, name starts with two consonants. I don't know. Like I just figured I would go with it. But I think the most important thing I probably learned is that open marriage, especially in the beginning, when you start dating people, y- you get obsessive about the people you date. Like either where there's a problem or there are good things or bad things. But we both are guilty of this, both Molly and I, is that we would talk about them too much.
Yeah.
And then there would be no room for us. And we spend all of our time talking about all of our other relationships. And then we'd finish, our date night and be like, but we haven't even, how are you feeling? How you doing? Right? You okay?
Right.
Yeah, good. Yep. And that became a problem. And I think also is that, we learned not to bring our other relationships. Like we would ask, so can I talk about this? And now we can read each other well enough where we don't have to go through a formal thing.
I always think
And
it's a good
mm,
idea to ask your partner, how do you feel about talking about this before you bring up a topic anyway, especially in
yeah.
one that's a serious topic? It
Hmm.
gives the person agency to check in with themselves and ask themselves, I had too much to drink? Am I too high? Am I too tired? Is my threshold for stress? Do I have some more capacity inside of me? Or maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just how I roll through. But I encourage people to ask their partners because when you give your partner the opportunity to contemplate whether or not they're capable of having a serious conversation, you often get a more willing participant.
Yes, it feels like you're welcoming it in instead of being blindsided or worse, forced to talk about something politely that you didn't want to talk about in the first place.
Right. And they're going to get a better version of you if you get to like really check in with yourself first. So, at what point did you carve out space for yourself to come up with some of your own rules and some of your own needs?
You kind of bump into the stuff where it hits you at the time, where if something bad happens more than once or twice, and that's the common sense thing, instead of being angry about it. And I don't know if I speak just for myself, but sometimes I'm looking to be angry. I'm looking to be oh, she doesn't understand me or blah. If I'm in a really crappy mood, and I've learned not to do that, not to bring in, not to take it out on the relationship. So I have learned that if something bothers me at the time, even though it might not bother me later, I just have to say like, can we? And I'm pretty. I think we both have learned to be politic about it. Like, can we not do that again? It's not your mistake. It's how I'm reacting to your mistake right now. You don't want to feel like you're being, you know, that you're basically castrating yourself. Like you're basically putting yourself at your partner's mercy. But meanwhile, you're just saying how you feel. A lot of guys can't separate that. A lot of guys can't. My friends, when we discuss, as long as it's not about open relationships, when we're talking about our marriages, they always have problems with that. Because at what point, they always say, well, at what point are we going, am I giving up too much? Like, you're not giving up anything because it always is a balance. There's always someone driving and there's always someone, passenger seat.
And like a relationship expert taught me years ago, relationships are the Olympics of compromise. And if you're not down for it, if you're not willing to ask yourself 10 times a day, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy in this relationship? then relationships are not for you, because you're not going to meet someone who organically meets all of your needs and whose needs you organically meet, because we have different histories. And so there's negotiation that's endless. That said, that's a legitimate question. What's the tipping point between compromise and becoming a doormat or not being who I am? And I think that that's a fair question to ask.
Yeah. I think you have to accept that you're going to change. I think people who go into marriage and thinking that I get to be me with someone else involved, you don't get. You're going to change, and you're going to change. You can't hold on to what you thought you were or what you were, and you grow the fuck up. And, or you become the Unabomber and live in the woods alone, and write manifestos, because there's nobody who will fucking deal with the person you were 10 years ago.
That's
Period.
right. Nor should they. Because if I
Yeah.
reflect back on who I was in my 20s, even my 30s, even moments in my 40s and moments now, like, thankfully I think I'm tracking this accurately and I'm getting easier to live with. But I wouldn't wish my 20-year-old self on anyone I love.
Oh
I wouldn't.
shit. No,
I wouldn't.
I'm so wow. We should start like this Greek chorus of yes, because holy crap. Yeah. I always tell Molly, if you think I'm annoying now, be happy you didn't meet me in my 20s. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I hear you saying, Stuart, is that you didn't necessarily have a list of rules or boundaries at the outset of coming into or of opening your relationship, but as feelings emerged over the years and you saw commonalities to moments where you didn't feel positively, you would then make requests. Is that it?
Yeah. You adapt as you go. And you have to, it's just like when you have kids. I was going to say when you have pets, but I'm not referring to Molly as a pet. But when you have to say it, when they do something wrong, you've got to say it at that moment instead of, hey, remember 2 weeks ago, you did something wrong. Do you not remember? Okay, well, this is useless.
Let me go
So
to the
you have,
videotape.
right. But that's okay. I've been recording all of our conversations. But it's kind of, that's a talent to learn, is speak while the iron is angry. I'm going to mix metaphors.
I'm going to actually offer a modification on that concept, which is, if I do believe that most people learn best in the moment because the example is fresh in our minds. And so the person on the receiving end of the request is crystal clear about what happened and what they just did. But speaking when we're angry, if you can't make the request or do the correction from a grounded, pretty neutral place, wait until you de-escalate to do it, because the person's going to receive it so much easier. Our nervous systems can sense when we're pissed at each other. And even if your words are pretty okay and your energy is contained and managed, our nervous systems aren't tricked by that. And you don't want the recipient, whether it's a child or a partner, to slowly move into their amygdala, which causes them to pull their prefrontal cortex offline. And we're not learning when we're in a state of fear, when we're in our fight, flight, or freeze, which is what the amygdala part of our brain is in control over. And so if you're not pissed, but you can feel it. 0 to 10, be at like a 1 or a 2, 3 at the most on an escalation scale. Don't be over a 3. Do not be over a 3, because then even if you've got your shit completely together, their nervous system is not being fooled, and they're not going to receive it well. We can't learn in a fearful state.
And okay, so I do agree with you 100%. The times I would speak out are things that were annoying, things that were infuriating. I would just yell, and she will yell. We will both yell at each other. And I am a big fan of getting it out that much, because I don't stay angry for long if I say something. And I know she's the same way. So we yell it out. And I mean, twice a year, we just go at it, and we'll yell at each other. And I will feel I know she'll feel better, but it's funny. I think that's part of marriage, is sometimes you need, like, sex, vacations, everything, that you have escape valves. I think you need to tell the other person you're angry in a relatively convincing, attention-getting way.
I
And
think
for
it
us, that
depends on the
works.
partner and the two of your history.
Hmm.
That wouldn't work for me. I have a history of like being raised by a very angry dad. I wouldn't even be hearing it.
Oh, okay.
It's part of why I mentioned at the top of the conversation, like I tend to be pretty stoic. Tend to be hyper managed emotionally because I saw examples of, and I lived the example of being a lot like him for years.
I
And that
see.
didn't work out well for me. So for me, calm, grounded dialogue is always appreciated. But if it works for you guys and it doesn't leave you with scar tissue, then do what works for you. And obviously, it
Oh,
does work for you.
oh, it definitely leaves a scar tissue. I mean, not physical scar tissue, but it's funny because if I were trying to stay, and this is again the difference in our the way we approach things, if I had to stay and exhibit any kind of stoicism, all I would be concentrating on was, all right, stay calm, just stay the fuck calm. And in my own head, and I wouldn't even be able to address. I would be so willing, just like, okay, don't be angry. And sometimes I think I need that, like, I have to feel like I am relating to her with my base instincts. And again, Molly is not shy about telling me when she's really annoyed at me. And I
Yeah,
think
I
that's great. And
definitely,
we,
yeah.
and we fight in front of our kids. Matter of fact, usually we invite them in. I'm just joking. We don't invite. But yeah, I know. I'm joking. But when we were on car trips and Molly and I would fight, I mean, we don't call each other names and stuff, but we like we'll nip at each other. And I want the kids to see this is what marriage is like. Like we love each other and we're incredibly close, but you fight. And that's the best way of getting things out.
Also, it's how you're teaching relationship skills to the kids. And if all they ever see is you guys getting along, they have no frame of reference for how to navigate conflict or how to
Yeah.
express when one of you nips too close to the skin. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I totally get that. I totally get that. Walk me through a time when you got it wrong in your open marriage and how you navigated that situation.
I don't know if I should discuss the reason this happened.
I can respect that
All right.
boundary.
Yeah, yeah, I guess because I'm gonna, but basically, I had told Molly kept asking me, just tell me how you feel. Just tell me, like, tell me really what you're thinking. And I told her, I'm like, I don't think uh, I understand it well enough. And she's like, just spill it. You'll feel better, and I'll understand more. And I told her, and she got really upset. Um, and I then turned around and said, well, that's why I can't talk to you. Like, why do you entreat me to talk to you? And then when I do, you immediately shut me down like, well, you're an asshole. Like, and I know she didn't say you're an asshole, by the way. I think she just said, like, oh, that really hurts my feelings, blah, blah. And we learned to deal with it. I think that was a big mistake because I then was angry at her for being angry at me. If you can keep this, if you can keep that up on your scorecard, that infuriated me, and that made me shut the fuck down. Is that from I was reluctant to talk to her for a year because I just didn't feel like sharing, and it got easy to stay shut down. That's a huge mistake.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine.
Molly, yeah, and Molly, to her credit, basically came when she asked me to do that again. And I brought that up. I'm like, well, last time it didn't work out. And she's like, fuck you. You have to let me have feelings, that you have to let me feel the way I want to feel. And it's not exactly, it's not me attacking you. It's me being surprised and me trying to deal with it. And I'm not going to hide how I feel. So you not sharing with me only makes me question what you're thinking and makes you have to keep something inside. So it's worth the 10 minutes or 20 or 3 weeks worth of discomfort, if it helps us solve something.
So I was hoping for something a little bit more juicy and a little bit more
Okay.
relevant to having multiple partners and
Okay.
not
Sorry.
just an individual
Okay.
example, which is totally fine. Just give me another one if you can
Okay.
land on one.
I can easily land on one. Um, See, that happened in the book, so I can't talk about that one because that's obvious. Um,
Not everyone has read the book. Let's give them a teaser.
okay, this is about as juicy as I think we can get here, but basically I did something and while we were having sex one night, she's like, "Where'd you learn that?" And I should have just said, "The internet." I don't know why I didn't. I don't know why I didn't say it. It would have solved so many problems. And instead I gave, well, I did this with blankety blank. And she's like, "What?" It's like, well, when did you start doing this? And
Also, why does Molly ask questions that she doesn't want the answers to?
yeah. But I mean, I think she was just, I didn't think she would, knew I was that stupid, I think is the point. But
She didn't expect
that
you to
was,
be that concrete in your answer.
yep. Sometimes this is early in the game, but yeah, I've learned to just blame the internet for everything.
It's very hard because you're trying to communicate honestly. And what would help the lines of communication stay more open is a more neutral response, quite frankly, to the truth. But that's not always what we get. But what the other person needs to remember is that you, you're not exactly encouraging more of that.
Yeah, because
If you want the truth, you have to look like you can tolerate the truth. Otherwise, you're sending a very mixed message. Human beings are hardwired to avoid pain.
and knowing what times you can talk about what, I mean, the truth can eventually come out, but I
Probably
would
not
say
when you're
sex is
naked
a
after
horrible time.
sex. Yeah,
Exactly.
not
Or
naked in
during
bed.
it. Yeah.
Well,
Bad idea.
okay,
Yeah.
even more to the point, but we'll
Yes. And I
highlight
shouldn't have
that.
drawn
Yeah,
diagrams. I actually, the whiteboard was a horrible idea. But,
stop it.
um, but yeah, no, I've learned since. I mean, I can hear about Molly's ex-boyfriend. And it's funny, when we started, I wanted to hear about what she did because I also wanted to know what, like, I haven't dated anyone in a while by the time we've been married, uh, 12 years. And I wanted to know, am I keeping up with the Joneses? And it kind of was like, all right, it's a turn. Like, all right, I could definitely, all right, that's fine. And, but Molly feels the exact opposite. She's always telling me, don't tell me anything that was good.
I
Did
mean,
someone
that's
poop the
that's
bed?
helpful.
Yay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, that's really helpful, but that's the kind of thing that you would only know about yourself once you're a few chapters into, like few thousand miles are under your belt, in an
Exactly.
open
Yeah.
relationship. You can't, that's not something you can imagine. There's so many there are so many potential landmines, because I can't think of another word, so many missteps you can make when you open your marriage that you can't even imagine before you open your marriage. You just find yourself in these situations. It's a
Yeah.
little bit like being gay, you know? There's not enough examples around us of how people are managing all the missteps around it. So we're having to learn as we go, and I, for one, don't enjoy that part of life, but that's why I
But,
read 40 books before I kissed my first girl.
so just like being gay, you don't have anything to base it on. So did you really learn what proper etiquette or what you were most comfortable with by taking other people's examples? Or did you, do what we did in the beginning where we were talking, where it's like, I just made mistake after mistake. Did you really get that from books? Or
No,
did you?
definitely not. And I was
Okay.
painfully underread about being gay at the time that I came out. Thankfully, Steph, my wife, so I came out twice. It came out as polyamorous first and then gay second. I'm not sure which my mother struggled more with. Neither of those was very easy for somebody born in 1933,
Uh-huh.
and lived through with a little child during the Depression. But in hindsight, I could have given her a little bit more grace, but she rolled with it pretty well. I leaned on Steph quite a bit. She was in the gay community from the time she was in college versus I, early 30s. And her community of friends were incredibly helpful and supportive. No, I didn't, no, there were even so much as like when we were getting married, like, what's the name we're going to pick? What's the last name we're going to pick?
Yeah,
Um,
actually, yeah.
we
I
we wound
didn't
up
think of that.
picking a different name that was not either of ours. We picked a third last name because we wanted to start something together. And we wound up picking the last name of a family that was lost. The whole family was lost in the Holocaust, so that we could carry their name on. And so that diminished a little bit of the guilt I had from getting to choose a really hot last name, to be honest.
That's so much nicer than I would have chosen. I would have been like, lip shits just so I could say shits all the time. But yeah,
Stop
yeah,
it.
but that's
Well, unfortunately, I say it all the time, whether it's my name or not. There is an excerpt from More where Molly is watching you sleep, and she says, "From my vantage point, it seems like Stu is having nothing but fun as he jaunts along the open marriage path."
yeah.
When I read that, I was like, that is how he seems through Molly's lens. What was your experience? The part of me was like, the guy is sleeping because he's so fucking exhausted from this whole thing. This is
I
exhaustion.
I would say that I know this is gonna sound weird, but she was right. Um, I had all the casual relationships I had before marriage. So it was a little weird to slip back into it, but I knew what to expect. And there was also a certain comfort in knowing that I had a pretty solid marriage and that she's stuck with me anyway, like kids, mortgage, house, I know her password. Um, and I think what I didn't realize at the time is that even though I was having an easy time with it, I didn't realize it would upset her that I would have an easier time and I was reluctant to talk about my experiences. Plus, I never really gave her the latitude to talk about her tougher time, like her difficulty in certain aspects of it. And
That
that
was
was a
not
mistake.
reflected in the book.
Yeah, I think, well, it's because, I mean, we talked about it, but there is a lot of things that I never, I would like, actually, I think it was, there's one time, which she was dating, in Kmart, the couple she was dating. And eventually I tell her, stop talking about them. And I shut her down and she needed to talk, but and we don't have many people to talk to. Um,
Mhm.
and I shouldn't have done that. And so I just was having such an easy time and she was having the toughest time navigating this. And what I should have done is been like, well, and I don't know if she would have accepted this as saying, well, this is what I would have done. I should have just listened, really, because it was a tough time for her and she was going to obsess over the early boyfriends. And I should have been smarter about that.
Listening is the antidote to most interpersonal strife. And it's really all we want is to be heard and for the person listening to tell us that there's some aspect of our feelings that makes sense to them, that like they don't think we're crazy. And I am very much, I operate as a problem solver. My clients come into session, they often have a problem, and I attack it like it's like my life depends on it.
Hmm.
I'm a professional problem solver, and together we come to conclusions and a strategy. And in my personal life, I've had to learn that that is almost never desired. That people in my family really just want to hear. They just really want to be able to express themselves, and they really want to hear that something about their story makes sense to me.
If you were to go back and say, what's the lesson I've learned from the whole open marriage experience, it's just what you said. We have to feel like we're being heard. That the most frustrating thing in the world is having a conversation when you're stoned. Actually, that's probably the most frustrating thing. Because then the other person's like, I don't understand a word you're saying. And on a smaller scale, if that happens in your marriage, when you're starting to say, I'm talking about, how I feel, or my wife is talking about how I feel. And, you play the game like, okay, talk back to me. Like, tell me what I just said. And then they get it wrong. And you're like, no, 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 no. If that consistently happens and you feel like you're not being heard, or the person doesn't even care to learn, that's what kills a marriage faster than anything else. And
That's
I don't
so
care who you are.
injurious.
And I learned that again, that later than most rational people would have learned it.
Have you been in your own work? Have you been in your own therapy?
No. Not to put down therapists.
Oh, I mean,
Uh,
I can join you on that bandwagon if you want to go there. I can be all in seconds, but I won't be. I'm going to ground myself. Let me hear why you've not been in therapy. The only Jewish New Yorker I know who's never been in his own therapy.
I know, yeah, I'm kind of waiting till the Guinness Book of World Records gets in touch with me. But my dad died when my son was a week old. My son was born. Yeah, I was about a week and a half later. My son was born, then my dad died. And I just couldn't deal with having the newborn and my dad dying at the same time. And my wife suggested grief counseling. And I thought, all right, I'll try it. And and I just felt, I don't know what I was doing. I mean, I was going to be sad in there. I was going to be sad outside. I didn't get any great revelations out of it. But the second time I went in, he called me Stephen, which is not my name. And Molly had a similar situation, but I, at that point, said, like, he doesn't give a shit about, and I know he's a therapist. He's not supposed to really give a shit about me. He's just supposed to let me talk and guide me through what he's supposed to go through. But at that time, I just wanted someone to give a shit, like to care. And that's not why you should be going to therapy.
I just want to say, if you're a therapist and you don't actually care and you don't actually have organic feelings in the session, that is the reason why so many of us, myself as the client or the patient of therapy, walk away with injurious, disappointing therapeutic experiences. The magic comes from the feeling. It doesn't mean that I have to sail down the river with my clients when they're spiraling. Somebody needs to be anchored on the side and capable of grounding the raft. However, if I don't really care, I'm not even attuned. I'm not in the moment with them.
Right,
So
right.
I
How could you
want
be
to
working?
say that calling you Stephen is not, I don't want to, you shouldn't minimize that. That's pretty terrible. I've had two therapists fall asleep separately at different times in my life, fall asleep in sessions with me. Now, I'm not going to say I'm the most entertaining person on earth, but when I'm trying to not talk about myself, I'm really entertaining. And that is every session of therapy. How they fell asleep had nothing to do with me. And yet, you know, one of them was psychoanalytically trained, and her response was the canned traditional response that a therapist gives, which is to say, well, Darcy, maybe it's time you stop bullshitting and we can get down to some real work. I mean, that is just such an awful response. Talk about like throwing salt on a wound or peeing on a wound. Like that was terrible. Um, it is, I think it's a bare minimum to expect your therapist to be able to remember your name, even if you're even if you're running a group. I get that there's more than one person in the room. This is why I only deal with one person in the room at a time. By the way, I really suck at names, you know? Um, it's not the only reason,
Good,
but
good
it's
talking
one
to
of the
you,
reasons.
Mike. Yeah.
I literally, Stewart, I used to, when I first started being a guest on podcasts, because I use people's names all the time in conversations, I used to have a post-it written right on my monitor of the person's name because I would forget. It didn't matter if
Smart.
how famous the person was, and they were often really famous. I could never remember their name. So yeah, that sucks.
See, I wish that happened to me because I would just wait for them to wake up and go. But by the time the 13th clown inappropriately touched me, I began to realize maybe this was me. You know, like whatever.
Well,
I would
you
rather have
were
a
a
field day.
professional comedian and you're a little faster on your feet than I was. The first time I was 19 years old, and the second time was when I was trying to land on my sexual orientation, so it had to be my mid 30s. And both times I was not strong enough to really to really push back. But I have since blasted my
I think that,
feelings.
and it's great that you have that experience as a therapist and you're able to be much more aware of that.
I know what
Yeah.
it's like to be on the receiving end of really misattuned therapists, and
Yeah.
that sucks. Um, when I think about grief counseling, to me, I'm thinking, yes, you're going to be sad whether you're in the group or not, but will you distract yourself and not grieve mindfully if you're not in the group? Maybe that's
I,
the justification thereof. I don't know.
I
I
don't
would
know. I
not have
mean,
gone back if somebody called me Donna, that would have been it. I would not have come back for a third group.
right. And I didn't, so it just actually, I tell you, it probably soured me on therapy, which then when Molly later, and I think she talks about this in the book, that she had tried to get me to do marriage therapy, I was like, fuck no, I'm not doing it. And she basically threatened to walk away from the marriage unless I did it. So I had to do it. But thank God she was an amazing therapist.
She
I
seemed it.
loved marriage counseling. Yeah. And Molly had a great therapist of her own. And I mean, if the people around me all have therapy, then in fact, then if everyone around me is vaccinated, do I have? No,
No, it's totally true. It's absolutely true. And the number of people who say to me, I'm in therapy because nobody around me has done their work. And I'm like, that's a valid reason for doing your own work. Like,
Yes.
if everybody around you is going to be sloppy, you need to be in great shape. You need to be in
Yes.
great shape if your community is going to survive. So, unfortunately, you know, that's a burden that falls on the highest functioning people. It is. I
Yeah.
can't
And
sugarcoat that.
I wholly agree. And I'm definitely am not one to poo-poo therapy. So um
Yeah.
but that again happened really late in life. But Molly is again, she convinced me, and I didn't believe it worked until I actually really heard her experience with it.
What do you think? What was one of the most valuable aspects of that experience of couples counseling for you?
I felt heard. That I think the woman who she gave it, I mean, two things. One, she heard me and she was not married to me, nor had I had a relationship with her, nor does she know Molly, nor I more than our names. Um,
All
and
good things,
yeah,
all boundaries that we want in place before we go into therapy, kids. Go
exactly.
on.
I felt that when she called me, when the therapist said, well, you're wrong, she called me out on stuff, I was automatically going to believe her because she was an impartial jury of sorts. And then when
Mm.
she called Molly out, I felt vindicated. But we both kind of felt that there was this push pull, and we started feeling better about our situations. And most importantly, was she gave us tools that to this day we still use. That the whole tell me what I just told you, repeat back to me what you think I just said. That has been so good, especially when, I pretty much have permanent ADD. So in the middle of one of Molly's sentences, I could, be in Venezuela in my mind, and it's not good.
So, why was that so helpful to you?
Instead of just making us feel better about ourselves, which it did, or about our marriage, it also gave us tools. Like it really helped us get through the really tough times. And all the screaming arguments, that Molly and I have had where we would not screaming, yelling, but it would always end with, what the fuck did I just tell? Like, tell me what I just said. And then Molly would say, or I'd say, and they'd be like, no, okay, you don't understand me. That's our problem. And that is the problem 99% of the times. And it really always been that's why I come back to, you have to feel heard. You have to feel understood and heard, because nobody has such odd, proclivities emotionally that they can't be dealt with. You've been married how long? There's nothing that's going to pop up like that.
Right. And one of the reasons why that tool, which we call mirroring, where we reflect back what we heard the other person say every few sentences, one of the reasons why that is so helpful is because it breaks the pattern that is so natural in couples or in two people who are having a heated conversation, where instead of me hearing what you're saying, I'm thinking of what I'm going to say in response to that. So I'm missing some real important content that you're sharing with me. And when you have to stay focused in the moment, it slows your nervous system down. The person, their nervous system picks up on that. Their nervous system slows down. And that person begins to be able to rely on the idea that, oh, we're not moving at like a frenetic pace here. She's really keeping pace with me. She's
Mhm.
really where I am. She's in tandem.
Right. You
Um,
just didn't realize it before. Yeah.
yeah, it's
But
very, very helpful. And it also gives the person an opportunity to hear that they either miscommunicated what they intended to say. It's not always a gotcha. Like, I knew you weren't hearing me. Oftentimes, when I ask my clients or I reframe what I think I heard them say, or rather, when they do that with me, I say, can you just read me back the note that you just took down that I dictated so I can hear what that sounds like? I'll hear it back. I'll be like, okay, I'm inarticulate. Let me give you that again in English this time. Because
Right.
we think we're speaking in such a full way and we're missing words, we're fragmented, and we don't realize it. So we get an opportunity to fill in the blanks through that mirroring
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to put
And
everyone asleep with relationship skills training here, but I can't. I don't know how to do it any other way, kids.
oh, relationship skills are like that's what keeps open marriages alive. But the third part of the mirroring thing, which I think happened to me, is that Molly would repeat back to me what I said, and she would get it right, and I'd be like, "That was a pretty stupid thing to say." Huh. Like, well, what was I thinking? And
Right.
sometimes, you have
Exactly.
to,
Can I rephrase that? I want to take that back and say it a different way. It
right.
gives you an opportunity to be a human being and not be, I mean, this is really poor timing because we're filming this the day after the presidential debate. So
Oh
I
yeah.
think we all have some scar tissue on us from last night.
We definitely
But
do.
it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation that doesn't feel like it has to be a debate. It keeps the temperature down and like you can rephrase and change your mind in the moment,
Mhm.
which we don't want our presidential candidates to be doing.
No, we
Anyway,
definitely don't.
it's a whole other conversation.
I wish I had a video of some of the arguments I've had because it's inarticulate and it's not what I meant. And the way I say it sometimes is as I'm assembling the thought, it comes out way different,
Right,
and just to get that extra point, just to be like, yeah, take that. But meanwhile, like, oh,
right.
that's not what I want to say. And
So I want to preface the next question by saying that in very carefully reading Molly's book more, I relate to Molly in ways that astound me. There are parts of her that she so bravely exposes in the book that I keep locked in a box made of steel. I'm not even sure anyone knows those parts of me. In her memoir, there's a moment when you say that her boyfriend, who she calls Scott, Scott's wife seems like a lot. You say, oh, she seems like a lot, and you're
Mhm.
not into that. And I say this with complete respect for Molly. I wouldn't be here with you if I wasn't a fan of hers. Molly's a lot. Molly is a lot. And your girlfriend, Kiwi, seemed to be a lot as well.
Mhm.
Do you think do you see yourself attracted to women who, emotionally speaking, are a lot?
Well, not to sound like an ass, but everyone is a lot. I mean, every human being is a lot. You just don't know from the surface, the level of their allotness. Um,
Exactly. And
but
and you
everyone
would have
is.
been an asshole if you said women are a lot. That would have
Oh
made
yeah,
you the
no, yeah, no, no,
asshole.
no. Okay, so no, women are. It's yeah. I love the fact I'm a lot. I mean, I like being a lot, because it means that there's more depth to me. Like, if someone could just read me, but it's also when people, and I guess this is my attraction to it. I like the fact that Molly is a lot with me because it means she's comfortable enough to tell me how she feels. I like the way Kiwi loses, her composure with me because it lets me know that she really cares. Instead of like, let's just have dinner and go out and do whatever. She cares enough for me to know how she feels. And I like people maybe. So I guess I am attracted to people who are a lot, who let me get to that point to see they're a lot. Because I have yet to meet a person I've had a long relationship with, or at least more than like 5 or 6 or 7 dates that haven't become a lot.
Humans are complicated. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Pick your a lot. Pick your version of a lot. There's going to be a lot, no matter what the package.
Exactly.
Molly's growing pains throughout polyamory, they seem painful to me. Um, Even at the end of the book, she struggles with a significant amount of jealousy. I myself am prone to codependency. I don't know if I could have tolerated my partner being in such pain and having so many struggles. At one point, she becomes jealous over you peeling potatoes with your partner when it's something that she feels you avoid doing at home with her. She also says in the final analysis that this whole experience was so important for her because she has grown so much as a person. So, two questions. One, were there moments when you questioned it all? Like, could you really tolerate it? Like, was this right for you guys? And two, what were your growing pains?
Uh, I never, I never questioned it. How about that? I always treated this as like once we decided to do it, once I told her she could sleep with the guy she had the crush on, I felt like it was just like on a diving board. You take that one step, you're committed. There's no way you can go like, oh shit, no, I want to go back on the diving board. You're done. Your gravity is taken over. And it's the same thing with this, is that I knew that like once she started sleeping with him and once this all started, we were going to start something rolling and it's either destructive or helpful. But if we chose not to do it, when Molly and I got married, we had written a guide to let everyone know who the maid of honor was, who all the people who were involved, and a brief, summary of our story. And it was very funny. Molly is hilarious, and I thought that we wrote something really funny together. And we sent a copy to my mom before the marriage. And my mom, being a fun-loving German woman, which those two
So, not
words
so fun loving. Yeah,
no, they're
oxymoron.
not. That basically she's like, oh, you should never, don't. This will make the marriage a joke. And I don't know why we chose to listen to her, but we did. And I've regretted it ever since. And I've noticed in my life, and Molly and I have talked about this a lot, like we've only regretted the things we haven't done.
Hmm.
So did I ever question it? Not after we started. I mean, I never ever look back. It's not worth it. I can't change anything. And
Right, but
now
if you
mailing
see
that,
it rip, if you see it
sorry.
tearing at the fabric of the relationship, you could certainly decide to pump the brakes, no?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's not binary. I mean, once we've started and we've done it, you can fix what you've done. But if we had chosen, let's not do this, I think she and I would have been worse off because she would have been thinking, like, what if I had slept with that guy? Like, what if? What did I miss? And then I will be with her thinking, is she thinking of that guy? Oh, crap. Like maybe, and sometimes you can't revisit something.
So you
So,
sound like you really entered this open marriage so that to control for Molly's future regrets, to ensure that she didn't have them.
it was to ensure that yes, I guess, that she would appreciate me the way I appreciated her. I'm not making myself the better person here. It's that I had the experiences to say, like, I've, I've comparison shopped and I have dated a lot of people and I know that you're the person I wanted. I just have to convince you of that. And if there's a chance that she didn't want me, I would much rather, and I know this sounds crazy. This is the one. I would rather she divorce my ass than be stuck with me. Then I feel like she's just humoring me and we're staying together for the kids. Like the kids, we want the kids to see that we're happy. So I would never, ever pretend to be happy for anyone. You're only living once. If you're not happy, change it. And
Mhm.
this open marriage has taught me that too, because I've been with so many unhappily married people. Wow. Suddenly I feel like the debate last night. That I'm like, I know,
Not
too
even
soon.
close, brother. Not,
I
no, it's not too soon
know.
because this will air in 3 weeks. I wish that was the biggest fumble. Carry
I
on.
know. Okay, shaking it off. So that there are so many unhappy people out there who are married. See, fix that. That it just makes me appreciate, like, holy crap, having a good marriage and a solid foundation is really hard and it's rare. And I wanted my wife to know that. And I knew she knew it, but I wanted her to really feel confident.
How old were you when you guys got married?
I was 30 and she was
And
25.
and in hindsight, do you think at 30 you really had the amount of sexual experiences that you thought you had
Oh, that I
back
thought I
then?
had. No. Um, I had enough to know what I didn't want. How about that? That I think I realized I knew some things about me. I knew I had some horrific experiences where I'm like, okay, that's off the list. I'm not doing that again. But it made me also realize, like, when you get, like, you see a person much more clearly after you've slept with them, especially a couple of times, because the edif you know the kind of
The veneer.
the veneer. Thank you. The veneer wears off, and you're seeing them for the person. And I I learned a lot. And so it wasn't so much about the sex; it was about the intensity of the relationships. Because sex still surprises me. Like sex never gets boring, and it has nothing to do with the physicality of it anymore. It's to do with like there's an emotional connection or there's some kind of connection, and it's different with everyone.
How many partners do you have right now?
3.
Okay. And how long have the other relationships existed for?
9 years, 1 year, and maybe a little more than a year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
Oh, so 3 relationships plus Molly.
Yes.
Got it.
But again, it's you go back and forth where you kind of, it's not like you see the people every week. You have a schedule. Like it's Monday, it's time for this person. Like they have lives too.
Yeah.
And sometimes they see other people and sometimes they don't.
Is it interesting being at different stages of the relationships with different women?
Oh yeah. Yes. Because
Because your mature
yeah.
relationship is with Molly, like,
Hmm.
and Kiwi, 9 years. That's a very
Hmm.
mature relationship. And then you have got a newer one, 1 year, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but it's you also like the new relationship aspect of it is kind of fun. Like you're
Oh,
excited.
kind of
Yeah.
fun. It's the it's the fuel source of life.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than the crush in the beginning, and that's what keeps you through the harder times. I try to tell the
Exactly.
kids.
Yeah. Oh, I am 100% behind that. But the fun part of it is that also everything kind of feels new in an open relationship because I don't live with any of them. So in a way, it's kind of it even has a reset. If you haven't seen somebody in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, it's like we have a lot to catch up on. This is not, I've got jokes you probably haven't heard yet,
Right.
which is never the case, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. So there's something to that. You don't live with them.
Hmm.
Does cohabitating take something out of a relationship that not cohabitating allows to stay alive or flourish?
Nope. Because cohabitating is a level of intimacy that you get used to, and when Molly's not home, when she travels and does whatever, I miss her. I miss her presence. And I realize as a guy, and I don't know if this is the answer you're looking for, but this is the reality, is that I would be dead if I didn't live with Molly because I would take such poor care of myself. I would stay up
Yeah.
too late. I would, I don't know
Same.
what's wrong with me. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. No, I literally have like calendar reminders. Like there's a block of time. Darcy must eat. Thank God my assistant is, well, Amanda, she is very nurturing and she like I don't know why I can't rely on my body to tell my brain, to indicate to my brain that it's time to eat, that I would be up till 4 in the morning every night. I'd be hitting snooze at noon. I wouldn't be working out. I'd be a disaster if it weren't for my wife. She keeps me
That's great.
regulated.
I say we owe it to our spouses to basically
We
like
do.
having saved our lives. I'm
We
glad you're
do.
like that because if you tell that to someone who's not like that, they have such trouble trying. Like, really? I mean, why do you stay up too late? Don't you get tired? I do, but I'm an infant. Like, don't you
Right.
understand? Yeah.
I'm
Like,
developmentally arrested at a teenage level, and I've never outgrown that. My clinical hours are 12 to 8. So, and I do my creative work before and after that. And sometimes
in
I
the
don't want to
mornings.
stop. Sometimes I
Hmm.
don't want to stop because it feels like playtime and I just want to keep going.
That's really funny. So I laughed when you said my clinical hours are 12 to 8, because then suddenly, like, I've given myself the whole morning. But I had to start, even working from home, I have to set my alarm and get up. And even though nobody's in my company, nobody does anything till 10:30. At 8 o'clock, I have to be awake or I'm screwed. Yep.
Right.
So I completely get that.
Structure for an entrepreneur is everything.
Yeah.
Your marriage has been open for how long now?
14, 14 years, yes.
Has it gotten easier over time?
Yes. Oh, yes. It's, you like in marriages, it's the same as open marriage. I guess it's in monogamous marriages as opposed to open marriages, I should explain.
That's
You hit
right.
a point, like every 7 years, there's whatever, there's, the sunspots thing where you hit some monumental problem that you have to overcome, or you have both have changed to a certain extent, where you have to kind of look back and like, are we okay? And I think it's gotten easier because I see that, it's happened maybe, it's happened a couple of times where you have to sit back like, are we okay? Like, we're fine. And I,
You're talking about all your partners, correct? Like you have this
um,
moment with each of these women
actually,
at
with
various
Molly, it's more
points?
so because I think, okay, so I'll talk about Kiwi, for example. Like, Kiwi and I have, it's actually by not being together and not living together, we don't get as much time to kind of have the same kind of like hashing out stuff. Like, we don't have enough time. Like, seeing someone for like 8 or 10 hours is not enough time to, like, you need a weekend sometimes to hash something out. So we
Mhm.
find that it takes it more management for the outside relationships than it does for my own marriage, which is, I know, kind of weird.
No, but it also makes sense. It really makes a lot of sense to me that you would need that time to both connect very deeply because like after a year or two, you want a deeper connection.
Mhm.
That's the whole point. You stay
Mhm.
together and you want to go deeper. You want more, not to, you know, underscore the title of Molly's
Molly's
book
book.
again and again and again. You want more. You really
Mhm.
do. I don't have her book here. It's
Yeah, I was hoping I
also
would have it,
it's
but yeah.
it's destroyed. The amount of writing and like dog ears in it, it looks defaced at this point. And probably has a lot of sand from the Bahamas. But it makes a lot
Oh,
of sense. And then also when you need to repair, that doesn't always happen on schedule. That often
no,
has
it
to,
doesn't.
that you need hours for that sometimes.
And that's always the follow-up date. Like, when Kiwi and I fight, we always say like, okay, so the next date, like, it's gonna be shitty sex. It's gonna be like whatever. It's gonna be like a shitty conversation at a shitty bar. And we're gonna feel shitty. And hopefully either we'll recover or then we'll have another shitty date. But it's not anymore like, fuck you, I'm leaving. Like, now it's, you know, we understand it's a tough situation. And fuck you, I'm leaving, I don't think has a place in any relationship. That's not the way any relationship should end. I
I
learned
love
that the
that.
hard way. Yeah. In the
Yeah.
beginning, because you just get so frustrated. You're like, you're disposable. Like, fuck it. No, I'm not. No, I shouldn't treat you that way.
Right.
Like,
None of
no
us should be
relationship.
disposable. Yeah, I
Exactly.
agree. I concur. How did your friends and family react to you being in an open marriage?
That is a loaded question because my all of my friends are uncomfortable talking about it. Like, they try to be friendly. They're like, tell me about how things are going. I'm like, it's going okay. Like, no, really. Tell me, how's it going like Kiwi? And I'll tell them. And I don't even tell them anything specific. I see them glaze over and I just see them get annoyed. And I asked my friend, who I've known since fifth grade. We were at Atlantic City for a guy's weekend. And I just asked him, like, you don't want me to talk about this, do you? And he was pretty honest. He goes, it's not that I don't want you to talk about it. He's like, I would have such a better time with this. Like, if I was allowed to do this, he's like, I would take such advantage of it. I would be having sex right and left, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, you wouldn't. And
Yeah,
I,
it's kind of
yeah,
like working at an ice cream shop or owning a restaurant. Like you think you would eat all the bad food, but when it's available, it's amazing how discerning you become.
yeah. Like, why would you want Rocky Road when you can? Oh, actually, I like Rocky Road. Well, you get the idea. But it's kind of difficult to talk to people about it. And I think my mom had a difficult time dealing with it. My dad passed away, and my mom, before the book came out, I had to tell my mom that the subject matter of the book, had to break it to her that we were in open marriage. And my
That
mom,
is
being
how
my
she
mom,
learned.
that's how she learned. Like, the book is coming out in a year. I'm giving you enough time. And she just said, yeah, by that time I'll be dead. And I was laughing and she died. She just showed us. Yep. She got the fuck out. She just, Yep.
Oh my gosh, Stewart, I totally didn't expect it to go in that direction. I literally thought you were going to tell me. And she just, of course, read the book, loved it, and is a big fan. I'm so sorry for the loss.
Oh, that's okay. I think my mom was pretty adamant. And to tell you the truth, I don't think it surprised anyone more than my mother. I think she wasn't hit by a bus. I mean, she got sick, but she got sick very quickly. And the whole life death thing as I get older, watching my mom go through that again made me appreciate not only my relationships, but my life and my health. And I went through it with my mom. And by the end, like I said, there's a whole other subject, but I just say, like, look, let go. You're, you've been a great mom. You've had a life. Like, you're in pain, just go. And she died that night. And
Wow.
I think we can will ourselves, like, she really willed herself to die, but I think you know, I hope the book didn't kill her, really. But I I appreciate the power of, basically saying I had
Intention?
enough. Yeah,
Yeah.
intention. That's yeah.
How did she
That's
react?
she was shocked. And my mom, again, she's German. She's like, I would have never slept with anyone else but your father. But my mom ran a singing group, and since she's dead, I could talk about this, of 65 people, a chorus. And there were men that I know she had crushes on, they had crushes on her. And yeah, nothing probably happened. But when I said to my mom, like, well, you've had crushes. She's, I've never had crushes. But meanwhile, when she died, I went through my mom's stuff as you're stuck doing. And she kept in touch with her college boyfriend to the point where she still had pictures of him. She had newspaper articles she had cut out, and they weren't buried at the bottom of something. They were pretty much in her top drawer. My mom definitely couldn't admit that she was just like everyone else.
Yeah, I hear that. What advice would you give to someone who wants to have a conversation with their partner about opening up their relationship?
Two things, probably. You have to be able to communicate. If your marriage, okay, three things. One, it's not like people have a baby to save their marriages. You can't have open marriage to save your every marriage that opened to save one's marriage. And all the times I've dated people, they've always ended in divorce. Always.
Mhm.
You need a strong fucking marriage for an open marriage.
You really
And
do.
yeah, and it gets stronger. If it's getting weaker, you're you're not in the right position. It's nuts. It's like skydiving. You know,
Right.
you can try it, but if it's not for you, you probably shouldn't do it. You need communication skills, which Molly and I kind of learned on the fly. Don't do it too early in a marriage. Like, you should definitely be used to being around each other. Um, yeah, if you can't poop in front of the other person, chances are you shouldn't be in an open marriage yet.
Huh.
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, that I don't know if that's really going to make it to any
Yeah.
kind of
I mean,
how-to marriage book, but
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept, but I'm with you. Carry on.
yeah, not that I'm in the practice. I mean, yeah, but and honestly, the biggest lesson I learned, and this took a while, is no matter how great you think you are or how great of a person you're married to, you can't expect them to be your perfect person. They can't fulfill every need you have. As you said before, like, it's about compromise. And you're compromising. And it's not necessarily a negative compromise, because if the person was everything, that's, there's nothing to want. There's nothing to seek outside friendships or anything like that. So facing the fact that I was not Molly's perfect person, I think stung at first, but then I realized, but we still like being together. We still have a great, sex life. We still make each other laugh. We still, we enjoy being with each other. And I can live then with the fact that maybe I'm 60% or 80% or whatever, but I can't spend my time thinking about the 20%. I'm glad she gets it from someone else, because the 20% she likes, I don't think I want to be. Like, I
That's
am
so
comfortable.
deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really deep. And that's, you know, I often tell my clients, when I'm trying to help them parse out what reasonable expectations are of their partners versus unreasonable expectations of their partners, I remind them that we evolved where we came from. We had entire tribes to fulfill our needs. We did not live in these individual pods, which most people live in, not communally the way people in New York live. And even if you are in New York, your in-laws are not in the same place as you. Your parents aren't in the same place as you. You don't have extended family next door and across the street. The way we live today really is such an isolated way. And the result has been that we project 100% of our needs onto our poor partners who can't possibly fulfill them all. It would be impossible. We want our partners to be, the loves of our lives, our soulmate, our emotional cheerleader, the person that we co-manage finances with and co-manage a home with. We're compatible in terms of our cleanliness, our clutter, our organization, our social needs, our hobbies. It's entirely too much to expect one person to deliver on. And it's important to remember that we did evolve having an entire community to fulfill our needs, not just the one person who volunteered to love us for the rest of our lives. And to hold them to a standard of fulfilling every need is to set them up for failure. And I think that's one of the glaring positives of an open marriage, is that we can get our needs met in other ways. You can get your needs met in other ways. I am not in an open marriage, but that is how open marriages work. And I think that's a beautiful part of it.
It is. And it's my main concern is that when I talk about open marriage, that everyone always asks about the sex, and that's the lascivious part, but it comes out to like exposure. If you have the ability to see what everyone else is like, it just makes you appreciate what you have more. And not that you dislike other people, it's just you have access to more. to use Molly's book, but that's kind of really that's when she first told me at the time, like, holy shit, that works. That really works. And it's not too much. It's not, an abundance. It's just more.
Yeah. Stewart Winter, you are a good one. Thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Darcy.
We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling is a Sterling Standard production. Editing and sound engineering by Bart Legal. Our theme music is by Trending Music. Special thanks to Amanda Christiani, Preston Smith, and Stephanie Sterling. If you know someone who you think would love to hear this episode, please share this episode with them and make sure to rate us. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode packed with the relationship, dating, and mental health hacks you have come to expect. References are always linked in the show notes.